from top 3, top 4 recruit in the nation to not looking like I'm going to get drafted. So it made me ask myself the question of like, do I want to be successful because of football, or do I want to be successful, period? And for me, it's like there's a lifestyle I had ingrained in my head. And when football didn't look like it was going to happen at that point in time, I'm like, well, man, I still want that life. So it really kind of made me start to really analyze how am I going to achieve it. And that meeting was like, real estate is the play. Real estate's how I'm going to do it. So I got into the NFL, and I kind of started to divert a little bit because a lot of guys have financial advisors and everybody was in the stock market. So I dabbled in that for a little while, just kind of thinking that's what I needed to do. And it just wasn't giving me the results I was looking for. The inconsistency, no cash flow. You couldn't use leverage.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. I'm Jason Balin from Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz from Equity Warehouse. Today we have an amazing guest named Devon Kennard. I'm going to let him do the intro so I don't butcher it for him here in a second when we bring him on. So Devon recently reached out to me via Instagram to talk shop on some private money and some private lending, as an asset class and business just to deploy capital into. And we chatted for a while, thought he could be a great guest for our audience. So excited to bring him on here in a second. I also recently heard his interview on the Bigger Pockets podcast and learned a lot about Devon. So I'm glad we are able to bring him in here, Ian, in a second and, share him with our audience. I think it's going to be a great episode.
I'm definitely excited. I always like these kind of stories. We've had, I don't want to ruin it, but yeah, I always like these type of stories. They're fun. They're exciting. Guys, if you get any value out of this episode, it's not about us. We don't care about the subscribes or any of that. But what we do care about is likes and shares. The best compliment we can give our guests, because these are guests that are not gurus. These are guests that are actually doing deals. Let's share their content. Let's show other people what they're doing and show that, normal people can dominate the wealth game too. And I'm super passionate about that and excited. Anyone that's keeping track over at CRE-syndicate.com, we're still doing the $50 million challenge. It's getting close because the end of the year is coming near, and we got to start closing some deals to hit that number, but we'll see what happens. Enough about me, enough about Jason. Let's bring Devon in.
Devon, how are you?
Great, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Why don't we just start with a real quick kind of backstory for the audience to learn a little bit more about you?
Yeah, so I just retired from the NFL in 2023. I played 9 years for the New York Giants, Detroit Lions, and Arizona Cardinals. And my tie-in to real estate goes back to college, really. I met a mentor. I went to his office. He had, and at the time he ran syndications and owned over 6,000 units and had his own property management company and managed over 10,000. And this is in Los Angeles. And I'll never forget, it looked like he had a Lululemon style outfit on. Like, I didn't know what it was at the time. This is back in probably 2012. But I'm like, man, he's running his own company. He had one of those standing desks, and it was the first time I saw one of those. And it just seemed like the guy was doing whatever the hell he wanted to do and was managing all of this. And that gave me the spark. Had a great conversation with him. And I'm like, his background was a police officer and his wife was a teacher. And he house hacked and turned that into 2 units, and he used his knowledge of the area from being a police officer to know where to invest. So just his story inspired me. And I'm like, if he was able to do that off of a police officer salary, even if I only play in the NFL for a year or two, I'm going to save as much money as I can, and I'm going to have a heck of a jump start. And if he did it, I can do it. And that was my mindset. So as soon as I got in the NFL, after my rookie season, I bought my first property and hit the ground running from there.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So that stuck with you. Probably it still sticks with you. Obviously, that conversation, that was like your first aha moment of maybe not I want to be this guy, but like he can do it, I can do it, and things like that. And I guess that that voice in the back of your head, is that what catapulted you? Like you said, you bought your first property after year one. Is that kind of
I had a lot of Yeah, I had a lot of kind of issues in college. So coming out of high school, I was a top 3 recruit in the nation. It was me and Matt Barkley. We both went to USC. And then my senior year, I tore my ACL in high school. Then I had a bunch of injuries and coaching changes in college. So I went from top 3, top 4 recruit in the nation to not looking like I'm going to get drafted. So it made me ask myself the question of like, do I want to be successful because of football or do I want to be successful, period? And for me, it's like there's a lifestyle I had ingrained in my head. And when football didn't look like it was going to happen at that point in time, I'm like, well, man, I still want that life. So it really kind of made me start to really analyze how am I going to achieve it. And that meeting was like, real estate is the play. Real estate's how I'm going to do it. So I got into the NFL and I kind of started to divert a little bit because a lot of guys had financial advisors and everybody was in the stock market. So I dabbled in that for a little while, just kind of thinking that's what I needed to do. And it just wasn't giving me the results I was looking for. The inconsistency, no cash flow. You couldn't use leverage, and it just didn't seem like the right fit for me. So that's why, I leaned back in on real estate, and I felt like I went against the grain because when I first got in the NFL, there wasn't a lot of guys talking about real estate like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's the same thing in the firehouse. It's the same thing in the military. Like, I think it's in a lot of industries that people just don't talk about, like, how to invest outside of Wall Street. Like, how do you, like, I think they probably got the best marketing game going, dude. Like, just stick your money in the stock market. It's cool. And like, I joke about it all the time. Like, you'll put 25 grand, and I like Elon, but like, you'll give him 25 grand, never meet the guy, never see, feel, touch, or anything besides buying one of his consumer products. And you'll give that guy money, no issue. But then yet you won't invest in something that you can see, feel, touch, do, and control your own. It's wild to me. One question I want to ask you, well, actually, I've been sitting here debating, if you were a New York Giant, how many times I probably booed you and cursed on TV. But other than that, I'm sitting here thinking because, like, one, like, notion that, like, a lot of sports athletes have is, like, not being good with money. You see it in the news all the time. Like, where did those beliefs get instilled? Was it from that college roommate, or was it, like, a family thing, or you just had so much drive, you said, I'm never going to be like that?
Combination of all of it. So I had the advantage of being a second generation NFL player. You're going to hate me even more because my dad played for the Cowboys and won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys. So
end it.
So I grew up a Cowboys fan and then ended up playing for the Giants. But what was interesting is I'm the youngest of 3. So majority of my dad's, life for me was after his playing career. So I got to be on his shoulders. There's a picture of me on top of my dad's shoulders after the Super Bowl. So I have those memories. But beyond that, I was like 4 years old at that time. Most of my upbringing with my dad was after his career. So it gave me a unique perspective to where it's like, even if I play 13 years and win a Super Bowl like my dad, I'm going to have so much life after football, and I need to prepare for it. So I kind of already had that perspective, and then the trials and tribulations I faced in college really set in stone. Like, I got to figure what I'm going to be doing off the field out, and that really the combination of those things really positioned me well to have a mindset of like, I'm going to invest, I'm going to save money, I'm going to do things a little differently.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish more people, like, that message gets pushed again in, like, every industry. How many people live paycheck to paycheck? How many people don't even think about life after work? It's like a really sad thing. And that was one of the motivations for me in the fire department, watching guys 40 years retiring and going to work at Walmart. Could you imagine retiring from the NFL and having to go work at Home Depot? Like, that's wild. So that's awesome.
I have college teammates that were really good college players, and they didn't take school seriously. The league didn't end up working out. And one of the saddest things for me was I was in the league at one point, and we played at the Coliseum against the Rams when they were playing at the Coliseum, so my old stadium at SC. And one of the security guards in the yellow jackets was one of my teammates, graduated with me, and I'm like, man, but I look back and he didn't take school seriously. Had an injury in the NFL, didn't pan out, and that's what he was doing. And it gave me even more perspective of like, man, I want to encourage guys not put themselves in that position.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of times it's just straight luck or unfortunate because I mean, think about it. I'm sure there was guys that you grew up with that were better than you that didn't get an opportunity. Like that's just what happens with stuff. And you had to have a game plan. You can't put all your eggs in one basket. You know, I remember a story from early on when me and my business partner Chris started Hard Money Bankers in '07. You know, we didn't come from entrepreneurial families or things like that. And I remember his mom being like, "Wow, it's really risky for you guys to start a business." We're like, well, we think the opposite. Like, we think it's very risky that you have one job, one employer, one W-2 income. You know, we're trying to create a business that has multiple streams of income in lots of different ways. And so it's mindset. You just don't know.
Well, and that perspective is so important because I feel like being a professional athlete, I was forced to think that way because, man, we played on Sunday. On Monday, say I had a bad game. I missed a tackle. I missed a sack. I'm seeing them bringing in linebackers to replace me. Like it's in my face. But you know, my correlation to the regular 9-to-5 worker is like it's not in your face as much, but the same thing is happening. They want to try to replace you with somebody faster, cheaper, younger, better. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's software. So everyone is in that position. So if I can get everyone's mindset to think like I was forced to think because I'm actually legitimately seeing the guy that they're working out, hoping to take my job, then if everybody has that mindset, you start to realize like investing and taking care of your financial well-being outside of your main career, it's not an option, it's mandatory.
Exactly. Well, so you mentioned you own at the moment 29 units, which is 15 properties, and you've invested in about 40 or so syndication deals. So obviously that, you know, the preparation and the planning for that hasn't just been since, finishing the NFL. So what did your, I don't want to say nights and weekends because, you know, practices and game days and stuff like that, but what did like a weekly basis look like related to focusing on personal development, financial stuff outside of football, you know, for the almost 10 years that you played in the league? Like, were you reading home study courses, listening to podcasts? Like how much time did you put towards kind of your education and development of this?
So even now, a lot of my leisure time is spent listening to podcasts. I just posted and tagged Hard Money Bankers, but I'm in like 2.5, 3 weeks. I listened to every single one of your guys' podcast episodes because I'm like, I felt it was very knowledgeable and you guys had a lot of episodes and I literally listened to every one. So even while I was in the league, for me, it was like while I was working out, I'd have headphones on, listening on the way to work, listening to stuff. So I call that stealing time. So it's like I'm driving, instead of playing music or anything like that, I was listening to podcasts. And while I was playing, I only had 5 hours a week to really concentrate on real estate. Because, you know, I have a whole chart of like what our schedule looks like, but we're way busier than people realize. It's, you know, a 6 to 7 p.m. gig 3 or 4 days a week, then a travel day, then a game day. It's a lot. So we have one true off day. You got to balance family time with that. So that made me hyper focused on building out the right systems and the right team. So when I'm looking at a property, looking at properties, I need to see 5 potential properties, not 100. So when I'm like getting deals from a deal finder, it's like, here's my buy box. Don't send me anything else but that fits this. So when I have time, I'm going to underwrite these 5 deals. That's it. And then I can put an offer. Yeah. When it's syndications, I worked with a financial advisor who specialized in just underwriting syndications. I don't believe in traditional financial advisors. So that's all he helped me with. That's how I got into so many. But I made him teach me how he underwrote deals, what are the main things he looks for. And I created my own SOPs off of that. Like, these are what, you know, a good syndication looks like. And I could get a PPM or a subscription agreement or what have you, and really have my chart, have that, and be like, does it hit any of my red flags? So I was able to systemize it to where I can get a lot done in a small amount of time. And, you know, that's how I got into syndications and buying my own deals.
Yeah, that's intense. And I think a lot of people, when they look at real estate, they're like, yeah, I'm just going to buy a house and I'm going to Airbnb it and it'll be fun. Or I'll just get one rental property and I'll get a couple extra $100 a month or a couple grand a month. Haha, it's fun. Like, taking that serious business mindset to it. And to me, what you described, and this is what Jason and I talk a lot about, is like creating your own family office and managing your own wealth. And executing on that at a high level. Like, that is so good to see. And too many people just treat it as a joke. And I'm sure, I don't want to say a joke, but as a hobby, right? And I'm sure it's changed from your first deal to where you are today. Like, what did your first deal look like? You said you bought it after your rookie year in the NFL. What did that deal look like, just to kind of frame up where it was, kind of a price point, and what it did for you?
Yeah, so I'm a pretty risk averse person. So I was from Arizona, went to college in LA, and played for the Giants. Those were three markets that were too expensive for my risk tolerance. So I knew I needed to find a cheaper market. So I actually got connected went to a meetup in the off season and got connected with a guy who was fix and flipping in Indiana. And so I bought my first property in Beech Grove, Indiana, with a partner. I put 12 down, he put 12 down. I financed the rest. And it's essentially was a turnkey property. He connected me with property management. And at the time, this is 2014, 2015, you could buy turnkey properties in the Midwest, and they were still cash flowing really well. I paid $87,000 for it. The rent was $1,200. You start to run the numbers, and that's a pretty solid return. Now, some people is like, oh, turnkey, you're leaving so much meat on the bone. But I feel like I'm playing chess, y'all are playing checkers. I don't have enough time to do this actively. Yep. I'm okay with taking a little smaller return because I'm going and trying to sack Aaron Rodgers on Sunday. So I don't have the time to figure out how to put the team in place. So that's how I started. And it was a great place because I'm like, worst case scenario, I lose $12,000. I'm going to be pissed, but it's not going to end my life. So that's how I got started. And then I did turnkey for a while until I really felt like I knew how to take the next step. And that's where I started to build my core 4 team and take on some more value add opportunities.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is, I remember seeing all those deals, Cleveland, Indianapolis. You had some stuff down in like the Alabama region, and stuff was popping up, and it was crazy. And we were in Baltimore, so it's like, yeah, I can kind of get similar metrics here, and I'm comfortable with the market. How did you get? I guess you kind of said it was more of a financial play for you, and like you said, you were playing chess, not checkers. But like, how did you get comfortable with Beech Grove, Indiana, or you're like, screw it, I lose, I win, and let's go?
No, so I'm gonna do a deep dive on the area and really leaning on professional investors in that area. So I spent a lot of time talking to that fix and flipper. Why do you like this area? Show me why it's a good area to invest. How many properties have you bought in the area? Do you have some background on how they performed? So that's what I'm looking at. And then do I have the team in place? I started out believing if you could build the right team, you can invest pretty much anywhere around the country. And I still believe that today, but I've learned that you got to have backups for your team because all of a sudden property manager starts acting a little shady. If you've been dependent on them, and now you're stuck. So it's like I always have my starters and my bench players for my core four team. But I still believe if you can build the right team, you can invest anywhere, but there has to be accountability. So that's where SOPs and being able to hold them accountable on a monthly, quarterly basis is really important.
So I know you've lent and purchased properties kind of all over the country in a lot of different states. Do you like that focus for a real estate investor in general, or do you think it makes more sense to be localized? Like, what type of advice would you give to them? And I know it's, there's different situations, specific situations, depending on, hey, do you have capital to put towards stuff, or do you have more time to put towards stuff? You're not blindly just investing. You're, obviously creating systems and creating relationships with people. But right. Do you like that strategy of investing in other markets compared to home base?
I'm not there's a lot of people who are completely against it, out of state investing. And if it's done correctly, I am in the camp of it's fine to do. But I will say now that I have a little bit more time, so I'm probably spending 20 to 30 hours on real estate and business a week at least. And now that I have more time, I'm more focused on 1 or 2 markets. I really like my team in Tampa, so that's somewhere I'll continue to buy. And then I'm local in Arizona. I know good contractors. My wife's a real estate agent. I feel like I have a distinct advantage here. So I want to buy here and I want to start primarily lending here. But the challenge I've always faced is I have a good relationships with people across the country. And when I'm seeing opportunities, do I take it? Do I not? So it's building enough deal flow and opportunities in the markets that I do want to focus. And that's kind of where I'm headed today is like, man, let me build the correct deal flow here in Arizona for lending and buying my own deals. And then I still like my Tampa market. So looking at there. So I've with time, I'm actually narrowing it down. But one interesting thing that I've realized over 10 years, and last year I hired my bookkeeper for the first time who helped me go back and analyze all my properties over the last 10 years. And what I found, I considered myself a cash flow investor early in my investing career. And when I really look at my portfolio over the last 10 years, I've had great cash flow, 8 to 10% at least, sometimes a lot higher than that. But most of my wealth accumulation from real estate has come from appreciation and my tax benefits. So that's changed my perspective on these cash flow markets to where I'm okay with focusing more on Arizona and focusing more on Tampa that are more appreciating markets at this point, because I'm like, wow, I can get my cash flow somewhere else, which for me is my lending business. But if most of my wealth, even in these cash flow markets, have come from appreciation, well, what if I put all that money in Arizona where things are, growing much faster? So my perspective has changed, and I've been humble enough to be like, oh, I planted a flag, and I'm a cash flow investor, and I'm going to live off of, I'm going to buy 10 properties and live off of that. And I analyzed it, and the numbers say differently. So now it's kind of shifted my investing strategy.
We literally just did a video, something similar to this at an earlier date about, staying local, about always having stuff for sale because you make the equity pops or the appreciation, allowing you to get to the next level. So was it your accountant that brought that to your attention or somebody else in your team? Or was it like you sat down one day and said, here's my books, here's my numbers. Oh shit. Like I just recognized, I don't want to call it a problem, but you identified a pattern that made like what report or how did you specifically identify that pattern? Because I'm very intrigued.
Yeah. So once I hired the bookkeeper, I'm like, I want to go back and do a deep dive. I know what my cash flow already was. I tracked that monthly and annually over the years, but I'm like, how's appreciation going? Let's go in and look at debt pay down. I want to go in and work with my accountant to find out how much tax benefits I got year in and year out per property. And then what's the appreciation been from today since inception on each property. And when I look at what, conservatively what the value is today versus what I purchased it, the debt pay down and working with my accountant on what my tax benefits were on a per property basis, I'm like even with good, what I consider good cash flow along the years, majority of the market share and profit came from appreciation. And then the tax benefits were a huge thing. So that was enlightening, and it's definitely shifted how I look at things. So now it's like I want to continue to buy my own assets, but I'm okay being in an appreciation market, and I'm going to get the higher cash flow from my private lending business. And if buying my properties isn't as profitable in the income today, I know what it's going to do appreciation wise if I buy right and all of those things. So that's where I've shifted. I've kind of balanced out my private lending business with buying properties, which I think is a great match anyways, because in private lending, you don't get the tax benefits. So if I can continue to buy properties, do cost segregation studies and depreciate and do that, it balances things out.
Yeah, no, it's a disciplined approach that too many real estate investors don't know what their real numbers are. Their ego plays. It's like, here's the numbers right here. They don't take that part seriously. So one thing that I heard you say on the Bigger Pockets episode that I listened to the other day that you've pretty much stated as we've been talking, which I 100% agree with. And, this is something that Ian's going to laugh about. And, we have friends that fall into this trap, but it was something related to putting yourself in a position to earn as much as you can in real time. And obviously, whatever your salary was at the NFL that you were there for a long period of time, far exceeded what you could potentially make on one rental property. I get that, right? Give or take. So, but so many folks, the real estate market's done great in the last decade plus. Yeah. And there's so many folks and a lot of people that Ian and I know personally. I don't want to say they've like cashed in all their chips, but they kind of just stopped. Like they took their foot off the pedal. And I think as soon as you take your foot off the pedal, you're in a real, real bad spot. And then you're just going back to an uphill battle. And yeah, you're going to continue to play as long as you want to play and continue to get a good paycheck, right? Like, yeah, that's going to be your focus, but not everyone else is in that position. A lot, or I should say this the opposite. A lot of people actually are in that position. They don't realize they're in that position because they're trying to chase the next, shiny object, where it's like, hey, you have a great real estate portfolio already, or you have, a lot of very good assets already. Stop trying to chase the next shiny object that you think hypothetically is going to make you more money, and stick to what's currently working and exploit that as much as you can until that's over. And Ian and I have multiple friends that had very sizable portfolios, and they wanted, they either didn't want to deal with the headache, or they thought they can do better and better and better. And then next thing you know, they're struggling and they don't have that cash flow that was coming in. They sold portfolios, or they did this, or they did that, and they're starting over. So that was one thing that, like, I agree with. Like, you're in a position, and what you're doing makes a lot of sense. Hey, I've got my private lending business for cash flow. I don't need cash flow anymore because I'm making money off loan interest. So I can go out there and I can go call it big game hunting, or I can go, in essence, try to get big hits on opportunities, because you don't need that cash flow from it. And too many real estate investors, either, one side is kind of all cash flow and no big equity pops, or the other side is they have lots and lots of equity, but not a lot of cash flow. And you really need both, right? You have that cash flow to pay all your bills, and then you can go out there and you can be aggressive and do deals, and potentially try to hit home runs.
And some people call that diversification, but I like calling it solving for fast and slow money. And not everyone has the answer for fast and slow money. And what I mean by that is fast money, I kind of categorize that as money that's coming back to you in a year or less, that's paying you, that's going to sustain your lifestyle and give you extra money to keep investing. What I see a lot of investors do, and being in the NFL and stuff, I see guys invest in venture capital, invest in private equity, invest in certain syndications that aren't going to pay off for a while. And I don't think that's a bad thing at all. But the problem is that's slow money. It's not gonna pay you off for 3, 5, 7 years, and you're making your fast money in the NFL currently. But what is going to be your solve for fast money when the NFL stops? So people thought I was crazy for starting private lending while I was still playing, because I was already an income earner from NFL. But I wanted to set the infrastructure, because I was looking ahead and knew that my fast money was about to stop from the NFL. And if I just keep investing in slow money, it's not going to give me enough of the cash flow that I need. So I looked ahead and said, I have to balance out my strategy and solve for fast money when I retire. So I kind of really push people to think about, how are you solving for both fast and slow money, especially if you're in a position where you're going to leave your 9-to-5 soon. So you said you're a firefighter. It's like, okay, if you want to leave firefighting, you need to solve for fast money at some point. So early in my NFL career, I was investing in slow money. Once I started to know my body's hurting, I'm getting up there in years, what's going to be my income generator when I retire? I don't think enough people have that perspective, and that's why I kind of label it fast versus slow money and saying you got to solve for both.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. And I was literally about to take it the next step further. My career, we could be killed or incapacitated, right? And it's like, well, how do you solve and take care of your family? You're one snap away from being injured and out of the game forever, and you were counting on a contract. Not all that money's guaranteed, right? So it's the same thing, and anybody can relate it to anything. Like a friend of mine, he was cleaning out his car, and some kids decided to do something stupid that day, and did something that put him in the hospital for the past 90 days. And he's not earning money, right? Like, that can happen to anybody at any given time. Like, how do you produce income at any given moment? And I think that's what's cool about real estate, and probably why you're attracted to it, why we're attracted to it. There is fast money, there's slow money, there's other opportunities all the way through. One thing that I've noticed during this conversation is you're a very disciplined dude. You're very regimented, which I got to assume from all your two-a-days and everything else crazy to get through. What does your day look like now that you're a full-time real estate investor? Like, what's your day-to-day look like when you're operating your business?
So, a big part of my day-to-day is it's important to have my family time. So I wake my kids up, get them dressed, get them to school. So from 6 to 7:30 is full dad mode. as soon as 7:30 hits, I'm in the gym. I work out for an hour and a half. I got to get my gym time and then make a shake. And I'm working from typically 10 to 4 every day is like lock in work mode. What that looks like on a day to day, I try to record some videos. I'm making potential investor calls. What's my marketing strategy to get new borrowers? Reviewing my portfolio. So it depends on a day to day because I'm balancing out my lending company with my portfolio of properties. So, that's kind of my work day. And then I try to clock out about at 4:00. Sometimes I'm still checking emails, hanging out with the kids or something, but, lifestyle is really important to me. So I try to keep things in a way where I can work remote. I can work pretty much anywhere. And I work about five or so hours a day, give or take. And I'm able to clock out from there. So I don't want to be in a position. I worked my ass off my whole life. Was blessed enough to make some good money in the NFL. So I wanted to make sure I built my family office. I don't have enough money to call it a family office, but that's how I look like what I built in a way to where I'm not putting in 50, 60, 80 hours a week. But I'm a young guy. I'm still 33. I want to grow my business. I want to grow my portfolio. So I'm very conscious of balancing that out.
Well, I mean, one thing that I think a lot of folks that might be envious, or they might think that they're envious and they might not be, but they might think they are, is, if you say consistent and focus and discipline, like you can do a lot in a few hours, right? Like you can still have your personal development time, your family time, you can do what you want and just stay focused on that. Because let's be honest, if you have an hour to do a task or 3 hours to do a task, you're going to get it done either way, right? So, you have your to-do list, you have your checklist, you figure out what needs to be done that day, that week, that year, and a lot can get accomplished. So I feel like a lot of real estate investors, they feel like they're grinding so hard, but like, let's be honest, are you being as productive as you need to be? Because you don't need to put in tons and tons of hours.
And I'm kind of cheat coding it because I listen to all of your podcasts. So let's talk about my lending business. Listen to all of your podcasts. I built a relationship with Beth Johnson. She's in Seattle. She created Lend to Live. She's another hard money lender. And then from your guys' community, Logan Ricchetti connected with him, and he's given me it. So it's like I've taken everything I could from you guys and formulating my systems to where I'm putting a little more work in up front to eventually make it where it's processed. Like I want to have policies for everything that comes across. Like if it's a commercial deal, this is how I do it. So it makes it more efficient. If it's a fix and flip, these are my standard terms. This is my process with the software I use, to where putting more work up front to make it way easier down the line. And it's gonna actually save me time. A lot of people just kind of pull from the best constantly, and that actually takes longer. So I found like put the time in to build the policies and procedures in place to your investment strategy and up front, and it systemizes it in a way to where it makes it easier and take less time later on.
What do you think your ultimate, and when I say long term, I don't mean like 30 years, but like, longer term goals of lending, purchasing stuff in your real estate portfolio, doing syndications? Like it doesn't necessarily have to be like a number or a dollar figure, but like I'm guessing at this point you're putting the foot to the gas pedal to just keep things moving forward. So
an ideal portfolio to me is 50 or so properties or units with a 50% LTV or lower, and over time pulling more. Like I would love to have 50% LTV with most of my money out, because it's appreciated. So to have most of my capital out with a 50% LTV in my personal portfolio, that's a goal of mine. In the lending business, anywhere from 10 to 20 million, a large portion of my own money, but some investor capital, some of my line of credit. So building that out between 10 to 20 million and kind of getting that in a stable place to where that's kind of, I have at least 10, somewhere between 10 and 20 out at all times. That's a goal of mine. And then with syndications, as a lot of them come full cycle, picking a handful. I think I'm in too many. I invested heavily in syndications when I was in the league because I felt like I needed to get to my goals. But as those come full cycle, putting that capital to buy the 50 units I want and into the lending business, and then selecting just a few of the operators that has kicked ass for me over the years and reinvesting in them and having a smaller portfolio of the syndications. But I think if I could get to that like I'm going to be making a ton of money annually. That's allowing me to reinvest. Like I'll be in a great place. So that's kind of my goal.
That's awesome. I mean, that sounds like a really nice balanced portfolio. I'll take it one step further. How do you start teaching your kids about the family business, and you're talking about the future, what the portfolio looks like, and maybe even passing them or getting them involved in the business? You having those conversations at an early age, or you wait until they come and find you about real estate investing?
I'm teaching them the principles even now. They're super young. They're 6 and 3, but we have like board games that are like, very Robert Kiyosaki's. I can't remember the name of it, but it's like cash flow something. I have that game. I like taking my kids to any properties we have locally. When they get a little older, even some of my out of state stuff, I want to take them to, just so they're around it and understand it. And as they get older, I want to continue to teach them about finances and money, because I don't care if they want to be in the business, but I want them to understand it, because I think people decide what they want to do for a living and think they don't need to care about money. And I want them, like, if you want to be a dentist, that's great, but you need to understand money and the business of it. Don't think you just want to be a dentist. How do you run your own dentist office? And could you own the actual property and you're leasing the other unit to a tenant and they're covering the whole mortgage? So like helping them think differently. That's what I want to help them do with whatever they want to do in their life. And I think finances is something that people look over. I found that being African-American, there's a lot of people of color who don't realize how important finances are, in the sense that it affects your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. I think about people's grandmas who don't go to the doctors because they don't want to pay that copay payment, and they're having heart issues and chest pain. And it's like, if they just went as soon as they had that pain, whatever they're going through could have been solved. So that's just an example of how I think finances impact our lives. And I want to help people have that in mind.
Yeah, I will agree. And it's not just demographics, it's industries, it's, military, first responders. It's everywhere that money is not taught correctly. It's a sin that we're not teaching it in the schools. It's a sin that more people are not wealthy and understand it. And, we can end up in a long conversation that we probably agree on, that you're ending up in the matrix and you're just a part of the problem. So with that being said, you're 100% spot on, whether it's demographics, industry, religion, whatever your belief is, it does not matter. Not enough people know about money. And that's actually really sad as Americans, because we're quote unquote free, which makes me upset, but I agree with you 1000%. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about your book that you just released? What was it called? Side Hustle?
Yeah, Real Estate Side Hustle. And it's really talking about everything we talked about today. I talk a lot about how to build the right team and systems in place to invest in single and smaller multifamily, syndications, and private lending. And then eventually the fourth pillar of that is commercial. I think triple net lease is a great option. I hope to 1031 into one day, just kind of let it roll and get a good tenant. So those are kind of the 4 vehicles that I think are great as side hustles, but you got to build the right team and SOPs. So that's what Real Estate Side Hustle is all about.
Nice. And where can people find that?
Amazon, it's out there already. Please order, and then you can find it on Bigger Pockets, and you can reach me at my website, devonkennard.com, and order from there as well.
Right on. And then one other thing, since we asked you about your book, we like to ask all of our guests, what's one book or podcast that you think everybody should listen to or go check out that you think is really impactful?
I think it's for people a little more advanced, but I just read Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and I freaking love it. That's kind of why I hired a bookkeeper finally to work directly with me on my businesses. And then my next hire will be like an executive assistant or, whatever, to kind of take some of the admin work away. So I'm really building out my SOPs now. And so I understand it. And then I'd love to be able to delegate that out, and so I can focus on the big ticket items. Jason talks a lot on a podcast, like about within my lending business. That's like marketing, that's handling defaults, that's underwriting. Let me know if I hit those. I know those are 3. I think there was one more, but just proof. I've really been listening.
Teacher and student here, man. I'm getting a little uncomfortable, but yeah, we just had Dan Martell speak at our mastermind group, and that dude's intense, man. Like that's like another level. Like we joke around like, oh, one day I want to jet and be a billionaire or something crazy like that. But like that dude, those dudes, some of those dudes are just programmed different, and his principles. Jason and I read that book around the same time, along with Who Not How, and those two books like back to back are just like insanely powerful. And it's like, oh my God, look at all this stuff I can do. But yeah, dude, that book is really good, and Dan Martell is an awesome dude.
I want to add one, because one that changed my mindset a lot. It's a kind of dry book, but the E-Myth Revised. Have you guys ever
Absolutely.
There's so many people running small businesses, and they are the business. And starting to build the principles in place to take yourself out. I feel like it's along the same lines of Who Not How and Buy Back Your Time. But before those books came out, that I read that probably 6-7 years ago. And that's how I want to build, my investment portfolio. So I think for someone just starting out interested in real estate, small business, whatever, that's a great one to start with.
Yeah, because you got the operator, then you kind of move to the manager, then the visionary. And and a lot of people are like, oh crap, this is me. I don't want to be that. The best part about that book, to me at least, is reading it or listening to it different times in your career or your life, just to see like how you've transitioned. Yeah, because you're just in different spots. And I mean, Ian and I have kind of gone back, and Ian and I chat, pretty much on a daily, regular basis. And we both have kind of the same book lists, and we just kind of read the same books at the same time. And it's just somebody to bounce ideas off, because whatever, I could read a book, you could read a book. We're going to get different things on it, depending on where we're at. And we've started to, read, some books multiple times. I'll give you an example, like Psychology of Money. That's a really, really good one. If you've never read that. Yeah, it's phenomenal. And I don't remember what his new book is that he wrote. But we just read that recently too. Yeah. That same author, but things like that like, you kind of skim and you're like, oh yeah, I know all this stuff. Like, I'm not going to get value. It's like, you're going to get value. Trust me. Like, dig in, and you're going to get stuff. And the value you got today is going to be different than the value you would have gotten a year ago or a year from now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's wild. So yeah, everybody listening or watching, definitely check out Devon's new book, Real Estate Side Hustle. You can check it out on his website. We'll put that in the show notes as well. This has been awesome. This has been great. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. You guys are rock stars, so I appreciate it.
And anything else you want to direct viewers or audience to reach out, or just check out your website, DevonKennard.com?
Yeah, DevonKennard.com. If anybody is looking for money in the Arizona area, we are 42solutions.com, private lending. And if you got any good deals in Arizona in general, I'm starting to scale up in AZ. So I feel like you guys got all your Baltimore and East Coast, so probably not no West Coast listener.
You never know. You never know. A
lot of good golf out there. You could probably get Jason out there. Jason and Chris will go for good golf. So
yeah, there is some good golf. You guys got to come out. Now the weather's starting to cool off. I wouldn't torture you trying to get you out here in the summer.
True. We used to go out there twice a year for the Infusionsoft National Conference in Arizona, and when we years ago when we were on board in that
mastermind, bring it to Scottsdale. Everybody would love it.
I know we might need to. You are right. It's a great spot. It's a great spot.
We've been chirping about it for hours. We keep saying West Coast. I said Scottsdale in the winter. It's the place to go. But that being said, Devon, we appreciate you, brother, and we'll catch you all on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.